The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales. Hello and welcome back to the Businessin Wales Podcast with me, Daniel Bevan. Now today we are continuing our series in the run-up to the Senedd Election, interviewing politicians at the heart of it. And today we are speaking to the man who is vying to be the next Cabinet Secretary of the Economy, Luke Fletcher. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
No worries, yeah, great. I mean, trying to deal with the heat at the moment. I'm not built for the heat, as you can probably tell. But yeah, getting there slowly, yeah.
You and me both. We've got the aircon on in this office.
Yeah, well, I was hoping to be aircon, and it is. So, someone up here likes me. Yeah.
If someone comments about shiny foreheads, you know why. It is 28 degrees today. Anyway, Luke, thank you so much for joining us today. It's clearly going to be a very, very exciting run, if you are someone like me who finds politics exciting, to the election. Just a year out, tell us, how are you feeling? You know, is it a case of the pressure ramping up, or are you kind of chill about it?
I wouldn't say I'm chill about it. I mean, you're starting to see things now ramp up in the Senedd. You know, it's the sort of rhetoric that always happens before elections, ramping up. But you know, it's sort of looking. It's two ways about it, right? There's looking ahead for the year and thinking this is a really exciting time. The other one is looking ahead of the year and dreading it, purely just because you know, right, this is going to be a busy year and there's going to be a lot of hard work in there. And also, and I know everyone always says this about every single election, genuinely, I think this is a really important election. We've had the same party in power in Wales for the last 25 years now, unbroken. I mean, that's a phenomenon in the democratic world. There's no party that has been in power for that long unbroken. So there's a real opportunity here now, and all the polls are showing it, for a change in style, it's change in leadership. So it's all to play for.
I didn't mention it in the introduction, of course, but you are a Plaid Cymru MS and spokesperson for the economy currently. From your perspective, and this is going to sound like a bit of a rogue question, are you going to keep the Cabinet Secretary titles if Plaid Cymru win the next election?
I mean, I'm not too bothered about titles and all that. I mean, I remember when Vaughan Gethin came in, changed it from minister to Cabinet Secretary, and I was just sort of sat there being like, well, what's the point? I mean, I'm not bothered about the titles. It's all about actually what we deliver and what we do. So that's what I would be more focused on.
Of course, yeah. It's just one of those quirks of Welsh politics that comes around, the name changes, and some people still call it the Assembly, which I'm very quick to to correct them on.
I mean, the names are always interesting. I mean, like, obviously in English, you refer to Senedd Morgan as the First Minister. If you then were to flip that and go into the Welsh, it's Prif Weinidog, which the actual direct translation is Prime Minister. So it's all these little different quirks around names. But I mean, just in terms of titles of ministers, cabinet secretaries, whatever you want to call them, not really something I'm particularly bothered about.
Fair enough. Well, we won't spend too much time on it. But so I'm not a fluent Welsh speaker. I do try my best. But so in English, we're talking about the Prime Minister. In Westminster, would you still say Prif Weinidog?
Yeah.
So the same title, either way.
Yeah.
Gosh. Oh, well, there we are. That doesn't get confusing ever, I'm sure.
No, never.
I'm sure the Weddion listeners are going to be, or avid watchers are going to be screaming at the phones at the moment. So let's talk about you. Talk about your backgrounds, because you're potentially going to be the person running the economy in a year's time, and you'll only have just turned 30 by then. So, so tell us about you.
Yeah. I come from Pencoed, which is down Bridgend area. My parents, it's very typical. I mean, my dad was an upholsterer by trade. He's now a painter and decorator. My mum worked in Sony's in Pencoed. It's a big employer at the time. She's now a cleaner. My dad actually was a trade union rep. So my understanding of politics didn't start off from a party political basis. It's actually just from the fact that he was having union meetings in the house. So I'd be coming home from school, and then there'd be people in the kitchen that I had no idea who they were, but they were people that Dad was representing. So that was my sort of introduction into politics and what politics was about. It wasn't until really that when I went to university that I really started to properly think, okay, right, where am I at now? Because naturally, you gravitate towards the Labour Party, especially from the area that I am and the background that I'm from. And I had been a member of the Labour Party when I was in school. When I went to university, then and things started to change. I ended up joining Plaid Cymru, and now here I am. But my background really, in terms of where I've worked, was in the hospitality sector. Still actually one of my passions now. I think it's something that actually everybody's quite passionate about, because when we think about the things that we do on the weekend, we go to restaurants, we go to pubs, that's where we spend time with each other and where we enjoy life. So, that's where my sort of background, really my work background, was in hospitality. And it was working on the bars in Cardiff. So I worked actually in Jamie Oliver's restaurant back when I was in Cardiff, on the bar there. Worked in a local pub in Pencoed. And maybe one day I'll return to it. I don't know. I really like the idea of potentially, riding off into the sunset and setting up my own bar or restaurant. Or the joke at the moment, the running joke in Plaid is that one day they're going to find me in my own little pizzeria making pizzas, and being completely, disappeared into the world,
Oh, is that a running joke that's come from the fact that you like pizza, or where's that come from?
I love Italian food. Yeah.
Sure,
I love Italian food. Love Italy as a place. But yeah, it is mainly because I am a fiend for pizza. You can have whatever you want on pizza, which makes it such a great food. But yeah, that's my passion and always has been, is hospitality. And I think that's why, when I took on this role as the economy spokesperson back when I was first elected in 2021, the first thing I started on when I was thinking about, right, okay, what's important within the Welsh economy, was actually is hospitality in many respects, and just sort of built from there.
I'm not going to let you get out of it. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I'm not too bothered by it. I'll have it. I won't have it. It all depends on how I'm feeling at the time. I mean, I enjoy all sorts of food. So I'll have olives on pizza. I'll have fish on pizza. Anything on pizza, and that's the beauty of pizza.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but we can talk about the economics of pizza if we want.
We can. And so that drive from the hospitality sector, from your background, then, what did you see? What did you learn from being in the middle of it and working on the bar that has helped develop your political opinions? Yeah,
I mean, I think one of the great things about the hospitality sector in particular is you're exposed to all different types of people. You're exposed to people from all different backgrounds in all different states of the night as well. We've got some stories to tell on that one. But I won't go into them on the podcast now. But it's the transferable skills as well. I mean, the reality is, if you can run a bar in Cardiff, or you can work on a bar in Cardiff, or work in a restaurant in Cardiff on a match day, or even when Oasis is in town, you can do anything. And I think that for me was probably why then, once I went into politics, being able to stand up in the chamber and have all sorts of things hurled at you and heckled and all sorts of names being called you really never really bothered me, because trust me, I've been called a lot worse on the bar.
And at least someone's not trying to grab a dirty martini out your hand at the same time,
well,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the great thing about the hospitality industry, and it always has been, is just the fact that you're exposed to so many different people of all different backgrounds, with all different professions as well, and the conversations you have, really sort of end up, I think, influencing the direction you go. I remember, actually, it's a bit of a funny story here. Rebecca Evans, who was the current Cabinet Secretary for the Economy, I actually first met Rebecca Evans when she used to come into Jamie's Italian, and I was serving her drinks.
Right.
I did mention that to her in the first meeting that I had with her. Whether she remembered me or not is another thing, because it was a very long time ago.
Oh, but there wasn't a reflection on how much she was drinking.
Well, no, I'm not saying anything. What happens on the bar stays on the bar. But look, that's why I think hospitality is a great industry, and it's a great place for people to at least start their careers, no matter where they end up going.
You're, as you say, a former member of the Labour Party, now at Plaid Cymru. At what age did you make that switch, and what was the turning point for you?
Yeah, it's weird being called a former member of the Labour Party, really, because it was a long time ago. I mean, I joined, I think it must have been when I was about 14, 15 maybe, and then left in the first year of university. So how old had I been there? About 19, I think.
Give or take?
Yeah, give or take, 19, 20 maybe. To be honest, I think it was just going to university and being exposed to all different sort of viewpoints and people from different backgrounds, made me sort of think about, okay, well, what's important to me? What are the things that I get passionate about? And and what is it that I actually want to see when it comes to, for example, Wales and its future. And so for me, I think it was just taking a step back for a moment and thinking, okay, well, what's important to me? And I think ultimately that's what led me to Plaid Cymru. I met a lot of people in university who were associated with Plaid Cymru at the time, and what I saw were people who were really passionate and really cared about the issues that were affecting their communities, and that hasn't changed. Every time I go about Wales to different branches of Plaid Cymru, I see exactly the same thing.
So was it just the belief from your perspective that Wales should be an independent nation, or were there other things as well, other policy differences at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't start with independence.
Sure.
Because I was obviously from South Wales, strong Welsh identity. That's undeniable. But what I did believe at the time was actually that Wales was not getting a fair deal out of the union that we were currently in. And it was a real, I think, over time sort of move towards supporting independence. So I didn't join Plaid Cymru because I was a supporter of independence, but obviously I find myself now in a position where I do support independence.
Sure.
So it was definitely a sort of a transition over time towards that position, which actually is a journey that a lot of people are going to have to go on if we ever want to see an independent Wales.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. That's not just a number, it's generations of trust built on shared values, because family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose to stand with, and that's what matters to us. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands, and trust, that's at the heart of it all. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing a legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
And you've sort of preempted my next point, is that we talk a lot about the fact that tides are changing, and that if current polling is to be believed, Labour could end up being the third biggest party in the Senedd, which is unheard. I mean, not only unheard of, it's unprecedented. That buzzword to not even be in opposition, it seems unthinkable even a few years ago. It's between Plaid and Reform, supposedly, again, according to the polls. That's a lot of change in a small amount of time. And yet, polling suggests that independence still isn't a mainstream popular opinion at the moment. By that, I mean, it's not polling around 50%.
No, of course, yeah. I think it's always important to look at actually where we were with independence. So if I go back to that point in time then when I made that switch from Labour to Plaid Cymru, top of my head, support for independence was polling at about 3 or 5%. We're now seeing polls on a fairly regular basis that are putting it around the 30% mark. So to see that increase in that period of time is significant. And I think there are a number of reasons for that as well, which I'm sure we can go into. But I think in terms of independence as a discussion point now, it's discussed far more often. People are far more open to it. I think it comes back down to what I said earlier about why I made that transition from Labour to Plaid Cymru, which was the feeling that Wales isn't getting a fair deal in the union that we're currently in, and that this is not as good as it gets. There's a lot we can look forward to in the future, and where I approach independence from is that actually there is an opportunity for us to actually create a Wales that does everything that we wanted to do, that provides people with a life that is comfortable and fulfilling, because we're not getting that right now. In an area that I represent, so I should have said this at the start, that represents South Wales West, which is Bridgend County, which is my home county, Neath Talbot, Swansea all the way over to Gower. There are a lot of communities, especially in Bridgend, that certainly don't feel like life is great at the moment. I met a mother months ago now, but I always keep thinking and keep coming back to her as an example, who had 2 children, was working 3 jobs, and when I met her on the Monday, she had £1.72 left in her account that was meant to last her until the Friday when she was getting paid. Just to think that there are people in those positions at the moment in a country that is supposedly part of the country that with the 6th, 7th largest economy in the world. It's just completely unthinkable and completely morally unjust if we're going to be quite honest about it. So there's something seriously wrong with the system that we're living in now. And part of what I have been talking about over the last couple of years is what do we need to do to rebalance our system?
Yeah, and of course that seems from the outside looking in, that's a terrible situation for that person to be in. How much of that, though, can be placed on the relationship that Wales currently has, the Welsh administration, if you will, has with the UK government, and how much of it do you think is based on global pressures? And I'm sure that the lady that you referenced there, it wouldn't be any consolation to say that the war in Ukraine, for example, has made her poorer, but it has, and that's
this obviously was the case before the war in Ukraine as well. We had that report from the UN. Again, it'd be worth checking this date, but I think it was back in 2022 or 2021. I've even got 2016 in my head, so it was around that period, right? But there was a report from the UN that said that austerity and the policies that have been chosen by the UK government was a political choice. We didn't have to go down this route. And there are plenty of other countries in the world where situations like these are mitigated against. There's nothing stopping us from being able to put policies in place that are there to materially change people's lives. It is a political choice. And we've seen that now with the sort of stuff that's happened at a UK level with the Labour government in Westminster. We saw that with the winter fuel payment, which they've now made a U-turn on. We've seen that with the PIP reforms that they were talking about, which they've now had to water down. So all these things are political choices. It's about what we think is a priority for our country and the people within that country. And then we do what we need to do to be able to get to that solution.
Mm. And since Labour got into power in Westminster, and we had all this promise of two governments working together at either side of the M4. It's going to be a very easy question for you to answer, I'm sure, as the opposition politician. But I'm actually more keen to know about the why rather than the how. We've got to this situation where it does look like the Welsh government and the UK government are so separate from each other on certain issues. I mean, Elliot Morgan would never admit it, but there's clearly been some rifts, hasn't there? And you can see that.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it a mile off, really. The whole partnership in power line that they keep using anytime it's mentioned in the chamber. I mean, the chamber almost erupts in laughter. I think there's some Labour members who probably laugh at that as well. We see actually an example of where that partnership in power isn't working. Literally, yesterday, I think it was yesterday in the Welsh Affairs Committee, where Llyn Medi, who was a Plaid Cymru MP, asked Joe Stevens about the gap in funding as a result of the national insurance contribution reforms at Westminster. To the Welsh Secretary, Joe Stevens, asked her about that gap in funding, and her answer was, I'm not aware of a gap in funding. Well, that goes against everything that the Finance Secretary in the Welsh Government has been saying for the last couple of months. So when you hear the sort of partnership in power line being used, I mean, there's plenty of examples we can use. We can use HS2 as another example. We can use what's happening now with the Oxford to Cambridge rail line as another example. Where it's gone wrong, I have no idea. Because, you'd think if the entire basis of the Welsh election in that general election was we need a Labour government in London and in Cardiff to be able to deliver things for Wales. Well, to me, at that time, that sounded like a party that was unified in actually delivering that. We've come to the other end of that election now, and then we're seeing this fighting between Welsh Government and, let's be honest, Welsh Labour MPs. It's bizarre, absolutely bizarre.
And HS2 is an example, actually, of a very political but complex political issue, that's really cut through. It's very rare that you go to a pub and hear people talking about the Barnett formula.
I've been trying all my life to get people to talk about the Barnett formula. So if HS2 is what I need to talk about, then great, let's get on with it.
Maybe that's why you behind the bar you weren't as popular with some of the patrons. But it does strike that, for example, on that one particular issue that people feel like Wales has been shortchanged. Yeah. From a politics perspective, then, you're in a good position to be able to say, well, if you want change, you can vote for us. But you've been not necessarily in government, but previously Plaid were, but you've been in cooperation with Labour for years, for years and years and years. That ended recently or last year. Do you understand why people would look at Plaid Cymru and say, this is just Labour with a different colour?
Yeah, look, I mean, HS2, I think, is a symbol of what everybody knows and feels, right? That things aren't, that Wales isn't getting that fair deal that we should be getting, right? HS2 is that symbol. But on the point around, cooperation with Labour, I can understand the perception of it. But what I also think is important to note is that actually, parties working together in parliaments or in government is commonplace across the world. And I've always, the reason I've decided that I wanted to go into politics is actually do stuff. So if there's an opportunity to work, say, with a Labour government to deliver something like free school meals, then I'll do it. Because that is what people are electing us to the Senedd to do. It's about making sure that, yes, okay, with this agreement, we work together to get policies over the line. But then equally, when they're not doing what they should be doing, and we saw that in the cooperation agreement, that we're there to scrutinise that work as well. Now, free school meals for me is a massive win. I was one of those kids who was on free school meals in school. I was also on EMA in school, and it was through the cooperation agreement that we saw movement on those two policies. So I'm not embarrassed to talk about the fact that we worked with Labour on that, because I know now there are a number of people out there in Wales who have benefited from those policies. And if that's not what we're in politics for, then what the hell are we in it for? I know with EMA, for example, 3,000 extra kids are going to be having access to EMA. Kids from low-income backgrounds are going to help them stay in school. That, I think, is something to be proud of.
But there's one thing to work with, and there's another to, I suppose the cynical phrase to use is to prop up, and the Welsh Government doesn't have the entire...
Well, I think prop up is a loaded term in itself, isn't it? Because, in order to be able to get some of these policies in place and to work, there has to be that level of working together. That's the reality of the situation. Again, there's a lot to be proud of, I think, of what Plaid Cymru has managed to be able to do in opposition. The bottom line for me is, if we can achieve these things in opposition, imagine what we could achieve in government if we have controls of the reins of power.
I suppose the argument is, though, isn't it, that... excuse me, I'll start that again. I suppose the argument is, though, isn't it, that you're saying vote for Plaid for change, but you've already been working with what has been the status quo. You want to change the status quo, but you have been the status quo. Well,
we haven't been working within the governments. We are designated members, but they were there just to see through policies that were related to the cooperation agreement. But I wouldn't say that means that we've been propping up the status quo, because the status quo before the cooperation agreement would have been not to have free school meals. So free school meals, and I keep using that as a symbol because I think it's a very powerful symbol. We had, over the course of 5 or 6 years, put motions down in the Senedd calling on Welsh Government to implement universal free school meals. And 5 or 6 times, however many times we put that motion down, it was rejected by Welsh Government. So through managing to come to an agreement on a number of policy areas, free school meals being one of them, we managed to change the status quo and get a policy in place that is affecting people's lives. I think anyone in the business world will understand what we're saying here, right? Is that if you are going to go into a situation and not work with people, not compromise where you need to compromise, not be willing to work with others, then you're never going to get anything done. And again, I come back to, if we're not in politics to get things done and change people's lives in a material way, then what are we here for?
So if you are to be in government this time next year, you would hope that Labour would reciprocate and help get some of the policies through?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I hate using this line because every politician uses it, but the poll that matters is the election result or whatever the line is. But
sure.
We don't know what the situation is going to be after the election. That's reality. You can look at polls as much as you want. They're looking very favourable to us at the moment. We'll see where the land lies after the election. But look, I don't think we should shy away from working with people to get policies that really matter over the line. I think that's what people want to see. I think people want to see that mature, grown-up politics.
How about reform?
But I don't think there's much that we agree on with reform, to be totally honest with you.
Would you work with them, is the question?
Well, I'm sure if there were policies that they agreed with us on, there would be scope to work with them. But quite simply, we're on opposite ends of the political spectrum, and same with the Conservatives as well. There's not much agreement between us. So I don't think there's many places that we would be able to work together.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. And in that time, we've learned it's not just about cars, it's about the impact we leave behind. We believe in driving change, supporting the people around us where we live and work. Because when our communities thrive, we all do. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands. But what drives us goes far beyond the road. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
I appreciate you don't want to talk too much about other parties and support for other parties, but it is interesting that a party that has no presence in Wales currently, or at least in the Senedd currently, is polling as highly as it is. You could look at the party as a bit of a cult of personality around Nigel Farage, but the reality is that the message is really cutting through. Those are voters that you're going to have to try and win over. You've already mentioned about the rift, or the gulf between, I should say, you and those potential voters. How can you target them in any way?
Well, I think this is why, I think this next election is going to be very important, because actually you have two very different versions of Wales that are on the table. I can understand, I hear an awful lot at the time people saying, I can't understand why people would vote for reform, but I can understand it, because we've been in a situation where, again, we've had years and years of just managed decline and politicians not getting on with things that need to be done. I can't tell you the amount of times I've sat in the Welsh Parliament and I've had yet another statement from a minister or another report produced by Welsh Government saying that they're going to do all this, and then nothing happens. It's as if the report goes on the shelf and is forgotten about. So I can understand why people are frustrated. When people are struggling to put food on the table and struggling to heat their homes, then they are going to be looking for an alternative. The job we have to do now as a party is to make sure that people see us as that alternative. So for me, that means going out, knocking doors, that's talking to people. Can't talk to everybody in Wales. That's that's the unfortunate reality. But getting out there as much as we can, talking about the positive vision that we have for Wales, which I hope has been set out in the economy strategy that I published. Go out there and show people actually there is a better future than simply just being negative about everything. Because I come back to reform. It's sort of, they're very good. I think the Conservatives are the same as well. And I think Labour can sometimes fall into this trap as well, of pointing out what's bad or what's not right, but they're not coming up with the solutions to be able to rectify that. I'm hoping, with the work that we've done within Plaid Cymru so far and the work to come, that we'll be able to not just point out what's wrong, but be able to offer a solution as well on issues that matter to people.
So let's talk about the strategy then, and what a Plaid Cymru government would do for the economy and for businesses in Wales. Rhina Biorwedd, the party leaders, talked a lot about making the business landscape really a strong one for SMEs, for small and medium-sized enterprises. What does that mean in a plain English? Okay,
so it's a number of things. I probably would start with talking about what we've been saying around the new Welsh Development Agency. I think a lot of people think when you say Welsh Development Agency, think of what was there before. That's not necessarily what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is actually a Welsh Development Agency that is focusing on growing Welsh businesses and providing that support to Welsh businesses that they need. And the support comes in many different ways. It can come in financial terms. It can come in educational terms. It can come in simply being a guide through the various things that businesses have to tackle, like planning, for example. We know how much of a minefield planning is. So it's really creating that sort of business concierge. So right, okay, if I've got an issue, I can go to that WDA and they will guide me through that issue, or they'll find the finance that I need, put me in touch with the right people, and so on. So it's about making sure that people know who's there to support them. Because when I go around all the different businesses, not just in my home patch, but across Wales, every time I go there, I hear the same thing, which is that there's so many different things out there at the moment that I don't know where to start. There's so many different pots that I can access and different places I can get advice. I have no clue where to start and who to get in touch with. So what we're talking about is rationalising all that as a starting point. Easy access so people know then, right, that is the point of contact, and streamline the whole process.
There are services similar to that, although maybe not exactly as you put it. And there are also lots of companies that work in the private sector who already offer that sort of consultation. So this is free at the point of service, for example. Is that the proposal?
Yeah, well, it's the same way terms that places like Business Wales and Development Bank of Wales operate. Obviously, where there is a financial element to it. If a company is looking for a loan or whatever, then obviously that's not free.
Sure.
But in terms of accessing the service, it's important that it is free, because when we talk about SMEs in particular, we know, of course, overheads are massive. We know as well they haven't got massive administrative teams, normally a one-man bands. So we need to make sure that the support is there for them to be able to grow. And we know then all the different challenges that come with that as well. So it's about making sure that we have that institution that can walk them through the process and add value to that as well.
Mm-hmm. From, I guess, from an SME perspective, and I don't run an SME business, but one thing I think that a lot of SME business runners and sole traders feel at the moment is that they're not being prioritized when it comes to policy. That business policy is often, there's big sums of money going to big companies to create 100 jobs, for example. One person, who I won't name, but spoke with recently, said, if you put that kind of money into 1,000 SME businesses to create one job, you'd get 1,000 jobs. And your simple maths, obviously that's much more beneficial. Is that the kind of approach that you're coming from with this?
Yeah, well, it's an SME-focused business landscape or business support landscape that we want to create. And it doesn't just stop then as simply creating a business, because I also hear that there's plenty there to help people set up their business. It's also about growing the business as well. So making sure that the service is there to help people grow their business, expand their business. Because ultimately, those businesses then, as they expand and grow, create more jobs. They're rooted in the communities because that's where they're based, and they stay there for the long term. Now, there is a place for stuff like foreign direct investment, no doubt, because there's a possibility of creating thousands of jobs in a very short space of time. What we need to be better at, though, is if we're going to go down that route, is getting better terms out of those agreements with those multinationals or bigger businesses, but also as well making sure that we're growing then the smaller and medium-sized businesses that are going to be based around them at the same time. We haven't been particularly good at doing that over the years. So I always talk about another problem that I think is within the business landscape as well, which is we and others, FSB included, have termed it the missing middle within Wales. So we have plenty of those small micro businesses within Wales, but when it comes to those medium-sized businesses, there aren't many in existence. And when they do eventually get to that size, they're often sold off. Prime example, Rachel's Dairy down Ceredigion, very successful business, very profitable, ended up being sold, bought then by a business outside of Wales, who ended up shutting that business down, meaning that the value that business created in that community was lost to that community. What we want a WDA to be able to do is be a point of contact for people who are looking to sell their businesses that are based in Wales and say, right, okay, what are the options on the table? One of those could be something like a workers' buyout or a management buyout. What we want to do, though, is make sure that those businesses are staying in Wales, they're rooted in Wales, so that then the value they're creating is felt by the communities within Wales. And ultimately, then the jobs created stay within Wales. And then that, I think, is going to be the real sort of nut that we need to crack when we talk about wanting to grow the Welsh economy. Because we know it's been stagnating for years. And I think that speaks to that broader issue that I think we have within the Welsh economy, which is that issue of ownership. So if we can crack that nut, I think we'll then be on our way to seeing sustained economic growth, but growth within our communities as well. Growth in terms of people being able to access good quality jobs and feel proud of their communities again. And seeing the high streets flourish, which we know any town you go to in Wales, anyone you speak to in Wales, is something that people want to see done better and improved. So this potentially is a route for us doing that.
On the completely other side of the spectrum, and huge businesses, where does Wales's first unicorn come from?
That's an interesting question, yeah. Because, I mean, when you think about a company like Admiral, people want to see another company like Admiral become established in Wales. There's, I think, a lot of places where there's big potential for us to be able to see Welsh business grow to a significant size. I mean, it comes down to, for me though, in those sectors, the ownership element of it, how that investment is made. So let's look at Talbot, right, as a prime example. We see all this investment going into green technology and offshore wind in particular. The problem we have down there is that a lot of those businesses that are operating in that sector are multinational businesses. There's a real potential with the right investment, the right thought going into it, of getting a Welsh business off the ground that is part of that supply chain and help them grow and then specialise in that particular industry and then operate not just in Wales but elsewhere as well. I think the honest answer in terms of where that unicorn comes from, I don't know, but that's not a bad thing, right? Because there's potentially so many different areas that we could get that Welsh unicorn to come from. But it requires the right attitude, it requires the right investment and the right vision from a government, and we're just simply not getting that at the moment.
Do you think that that's what's held us back from having one of those multi-billion pound companies that props up probably not even an entire community, an entire city really, which is how most big cities have started off. You look at Silicon Valley, for example, it all started with one company. Now there's tens, isn't there?
Yeah, ownership, I think, is one of those key problems within the Welsh economy. Most of the economy is owned by other companies from other countries. If we're not going to address that fundamental issue of ownership within the business landscape in Wales, and then help people when they want to grow their business, or if they decide to sell it, help them keep that business within Wales and try and keep that business in Wales, then we're never going to see those businesses grow to a size then where they're like the size of Admiral, where they're the size of a company that could prop up an entire town, city, whatever it may be. So we really have to get down to resolving that issue of ownership and legacy planning, which hasn't happened over the years.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years, and we've never stood still. Because for us, it's not just about where we've been, it's about where we're going. We believe in progress, embracing innovation, investing in technology, and moving towards a more sustainable future for everyone. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's most forward-thinking motor brands. But our drive is always to the future. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
Something I learned this week, actually, which I didn't realise, is there's no wind turbine manufacturers in Wales.
No.
And it probably isn't a surprise to you, but it was a surprise to me, especially considering how much emphasis has been put on offshore and
And you think about excuse me. Cut that one out, hopefully. Sorry. If you think about all the wind turbines, right, that are set up across Wales on land, majority of those wind turbines, if not all of them, were manufactured elsewhere. We talk about offshore wind now in the Celtic Sea. As things currently stand, those turbines are going to be manufactured probably in Spain, somewhere on the continent, and shipped over. Particularly with offshore wind, we've heard time and time again now from government, whether that's Welsh government, UK government, saying that here's a huge opportunity for our communities, here's a huge boost to the Welsh economy. And no doubt it will be. But for me, it's a question of then, okay, well, where do those profits go? And who is feeling the greatest part of that benefit and growth? What I want to see is, okay, great, we have these offshore wind turbines that are going to be put into the Celtic Sea. What I want to see is government investing in capacity for assembly and manufacturing. And so then we're not just simply having the turbines shipped over here, potentially assembled and then pushed out to the Celtic Sea. But from start to finish, we are producing those turbines. We're putting them together and we're putting them out to sea. Creating that sort of supply line would be a huge, huge boon for somewhere like Port Talbot, especially when you think about what's happened now with Tata Steel. And the jobs that were lost there. Yes, of course, we've got the electric arc furnace coming in, but it's not going to be replacing the same amount of jobs that were lost in the blast furnaces. 3,000 jobs lost there, potentially 10,000 across the supply chain along the M4 corridor. So we need to start thinking, okay, well, what's going to be the next big thing there? What's going to be the thing that's going to bring jobs, not just for the short term, but for the long term? Huge potential in this offshore wind industry. It's just not really being taken advantage of at the moment. I've been asking questions consistently of Welsh Government around port readiness in particular. And it's good to see that the government have put a task and finish group in place to look at, okay, what do we need to do? But we're already massively behind other places. Those investments that need to be made have been made in places like France, been made in places like Spain and the Netherlands. there's even been investments made in ports in the other parts of the UK, in places like Bristol. So we're a real clinch point, where if we're not careful, we're going to miss the boat. And other places will reap the benefits then of offshore wind in the Celtic Sea by assembling, manufacturing. And then Wales would just be a stop on the journey to put it out into the Celtic Sea. And that's not what any of us want to see.
So just to wrap things up then, Luke, one of the important things that's happened this week is the passing of the tourism tax, or visitor levy, as the Welsh Government call it, bill. Your party supported it.
Yep.
We don't know MS voting records, so I don't know if you want to...
No, I voted in favour.
You voted in favour.
Yeah.
Considering your hospitality background, I think some people would be surprised to hear that you're supportive of it. You don't mind just outlining that first of all? Why this was the right move?
Yeah, I mean, you can find businesses within the sector who are also very supportive of the tourism levy. What the tourism levy is going to allow us to do is create that pot of funding that can be put into those communities to improve the tourist experience for everybody. So, for example, cleaning streets, something as simple as that. Making sure that there's bus services that are running 2 time and are regular as well. That's what this levy allows us to do. It allows us also then to relieve some of the pressure on local services for people living within those communities as well. We all want to see a tourism sector that thrives, but that can't be to the detriment of the communities that tourism sector is operating in, but also relies on as well. So for me, it's about finding that balance between the sector and the communities the sector operate in. And I think the tourism levy goes some way to finding that balance. I think it's important to think about the tourism levy in other parts of the world. And there are variations of it. There's no point denying that. But in every situation where a tourism levy has been proposed, there's been massive opposition to it. And then when it's come into play and people start seeing the benefits of it, people then look back at that period and think, oh, why didn't we do it sooner? So I genuinely think that we're going to be in a position in a couple of years' time that we'll look back at this period and go, it was the right thing to do.
But of course, and you're right, there are some businesses that are supportive of it. But the ones that we've spoken to recently say tourism and hospitality have been battered, mostly because of the pandemic.
Yeah,
and you agree? Yeah.
I don't disagree, right? I mean, there's a lot of things within the sector that just simply hasn't been right for a long time. So I think stuff like VAT, right, is a prime example. Mm-hmm. And one thing I will agree with when it comes to the levy in other countries is that in European countries in particular, the rates of VAT are lower.
Yes.
So I think that is something that the government needs to look at anyway. That would have been whether the tourism levy came into place or not. You look at the fact that you've got energy bills soaring for tourism, for the tourism sector and hospitality in particular. There's a restaurant in my patch not long ago who had a news report done on them where they were paying £8,000 a month for their energy bill. So there's no action that's been taken when it comes to energy that needs to be taken. And then, of course, you've got the skills problem within the tourism sector as well. Again, I'm talking specifically on hospitality here because obviously that's an industry that I know, but we know we're struggling to get people to work as chefs and waiters and bar staff. So, I do not disagree. It's been a tough period for the sector. And there are a number of things that need to be done to improve that. And I would be pushing government to make sure that they are getting to grips with those other issues. But again, the levy itself, I think, provides us with an opportunity perhaps to even address some of those issues. I think particularly around skills. I think particularly around, again, the environment that people are living in, making sure that people can stay in the communities that they live in as well. So then, you have that base to be able to get workers from as well. So there is a balance to be struck, don't get me wrong. And I think that's why the review period is going to be very important now, to make sure that actually the levy is doing what we said we wanted it to do. But yeah, you'll find no disagreement from me, right? The sector has had a tough time.
Final question before I go into my regular final question. If Plaid Cymru was to be in government this time next year, will we have a Welsh independence referendum in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get to a position where we can win an independence referendum. So, for example, the economy strategy that I've set out, I've had a lot of questions around why the economics of independence isn't a part of that strategy. And the answer I give is that this is a strategy about what can we do in those first few days of a Plaid Cymru government to improve the economy with the tools that we have right now. I think it's a journey, personally. I think the way we convince people to support independence is by showing people that there is nothing different about Wales. I'm a big believer in seeing is believing. If I can turn around after the first Plaid Cymru government and say the economy has grown by X amount, your lives have improved by X amount, that will be a huge step in the right direction to convincing people that independence is the right way.
I'm going to take that as a no.
Well, I simply don't know. That's a conversation we would have to have within the party. But I think, like I said, this is a long-term ambition. And I genuinely think that if the way we would win an independent Wales is by proving to people that Wales can govern itself. And it is nothing different about Wales. And the way we do that is by getting a Plaid Cymru government in place that can then put that theory into practice and again show people what we can do.
And lastly, I always end these podcasts by asking if there's any advice that you could give to your younger self. I'm going to say, from your perspective, you can't say leave the Labour Party and join Plaid Cymru. What would that be?
Younger advice, younger self advice. Yeah, again, the thing that comes to mind straight away is don't go into politics. It causes too much stress, and I feel like my hair is thinning already at this stage. But I think I would give the same advice to myself that I give to myself on a daily basis, which is don't take yourself too seriously. Enjoy everything. Enjoy everything as much as you can, but also do the things you're passionate about. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm really privileged and blessed, I think, to have the opportunity to do work that I'm really passionate about. Not many people get that opportunity. So I think that would be the advice I would give myself. Just keep doing the things you're passionate about.
Enjoy everything, even a podcast in a room that feels like it's going to combust.
I think I've shed a couple of stone yet in sweat. So it's like being in a sauna. So that's a good thing. Yeah, I won't have to go to the gym tonight.
We won't be doing the Businessin Wales podcast in a sauna anytime soon. But Luke, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll catch up again closer to, and if not after, the Senedd Election.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales.